Hey there, Adam here with kxrd, Kirkwood Experimental Racing Development. What you see in front of you is the remains of a losi 22 that's undergoing the full conversion. Um, the parts in the middle of the screen are everything that's been pulled off the cart that we are not going to be using. From a stock losi 22, this is all that is going to be used from it. It's a much smaller pile. So, to get started, the first thing we're going to kind of do is we're going to mount on our rear wheelie bar. So this particular person had purchased the car with the wheelie bar, so we're going to assemble it with it on. I'll note the differences as we go along if you did not purchase the wheelie bar. I have them up here. There's the other one. Alright, so if you did not purchase a wheelie bar or this bracket, then you can skip this step. So the first thing we're going to do is we got to take our shock tower, and there's these two pockets in here. There's these little spacers, and they will go in there. That just allows this to be flush across so that when this is screwed down, it's, supported well. So with this particular part, you're going to see there's holes that are offset. You're going to have the offset holes going towards the top of the shock tower. Through the back, you're going to fasten the two screws that you initially pulled off when you took off this cage ESC mount. This one started. And that is the second one. Tighten down. We'll go back to this one. So with it thrown into plastic, you don't want to reef on it. It's plastic, it's not metal. You can strip the threads, so just be careful. All right, we're gonna screw this part of the transmission back on. And we just pulled off the transmission just to make it easy to put that bracket on. So if you use a cordless drill, make sure you have it on lowest torque setting, and even still, just be easy tightening it in, because you can strip stock plastic, my 3D printed parts, all that can happen. Okay, so we got that assembly going on there. What we're gonna do though is we're gonna work from the front on our way to the back. So I'm gonna grab my servo brackets. Hopefully these are the right size ones. Good. All right, so we're gonna grab our front bumper, and we're gonna grab a short length countersunk screw. Okay, so we're using one that is provided with the kit. And this screw is kind of just used to hold the bumper in place, so when you try to screw down your servo, you're good. So from the original cart, we are going to look for a pair of 25 millimeter shocks, or 25 millimeter screws. countersunk. I believe would be the length. Right now I'm just going to take out all the long countersunk screws that I pulled off the original car. Okay, that's looking to be them all. Those are too long. So these look to be, I guess, they're 25mm long screws here. Okay, so that's the bumper attached. Next up, we're going to go to our steering, and we're going to first unscrew in the ball studs in the front. So we need 2 ball studs, and we need our steering link that was pulled off the car originally. So because we're using 15-degree caster blocks, we're going to want to use a 2mm shim. So I include these little part trees, and the 2 biggest diameter or biggest heights are 2mm. If you're running 5-degree caster blocks, you run no spacers. If you're running a 10-degree, you run a millimeter, and if you're running 15, you're going to run 2. This helps to compensate for the angle of the caster block so that your links still stay parallel. We're going to grab 2 like 8mm countersunk screws you pulled off the car. You can use that to fasten in this J looking bracket into your front bulkhead piece. Now, for my build, I had pre-tapped all the holes with an M3 screw. So like that, that is screwed in there. This will find its way in here, and it'll just slide back and forth. If it's a little snug, you might need to play with this J piece. So that is that part there. So now one thing that you gotta be kind of concerned of is, and I might not have it because it might not have been on the car initially pulling it, there should be a set of screws that will be just long enough to make its way through and not go protruding past. So I might need to pause the video in order to take a set of screws and grind them down. We'll see as it goes along here with the build. So I'm going to pull this off to the side for now, just in case I need to adjust it. So this particular bracket here does a couple things. It has holes for our set screw to kind of add a little bit of friction so the screws don't back out. Creates a little pathway for our servo wire to be held down neatly, and does enough just to space the arms away from the chassis so they don't hit. Okay, so what we do need to do is flip these arms over. So it's going to be a case that they're just switching sides. So your little screw is still going to be going towards the front of the car. So I'm going to take this arm and go directly over to the other side. Do the same with the other one. So now it's gonna be a case that your right is on your left and your left is on your right. I think. Or no, it actually ends up being the right way. It ends up being the right way, but we end up taking the front bulkhead and flipping it upside down. So that's flipped upside down. This fits right underneath this, and it'll get sandwiched on top of that bulkhead. So I am going to have to take a set of screws and grind them down. So I won't install them. I'll just pinpoint where you put those two screws on. They're going to be a 20 mil length screw that will go in there. There should be a pair of 20 mil screws normally on the car. They must have been pulled off when everything is pulled off the car initially. I think there might be then the screws that go from the side rails into the servo. So that's not here, so I'll have to grind a set down. So we will at least install the servo on bulkhead in the front. But what I'm going to use is I'm going to use a pair of 30 mil screws in the front on the back holes that go through the whole length, just to have more support. So we're taking this little bracket. We're going to feed it through. So it's in place, held down. Rest our arms on top. Finish off the bulkhead. Feed it through. Find that hole. Okay, so I just have to get two screws ground down, but they're going to go into these two front holes. They go like that. These screws are going to be too long that they'll protrude. If the screws too long, they'll protrude out through this opening and get into your servo rack or steering rack, which is not obviously good. So what we'll do next is we are going to go ahead and install a little receiver mount. You don't need to put this on there, but it's just a nice little thing to have. Now, a tiny little button screw like the one from your servo, or the transmission cover case would work here. So you just have a tiny little button head screw. Feed it into here. And this just holds your antenna tube. Place. We're going to grab two shorter length button head screws. And that's a little bit of a bummer when you don't have the full kit. A couple of the screws are missing. So these are screws that I pulled off an existing losi before from doing a kit, and these are ones that are left over. That's on. We're going to grab 2 ball studs. And right in front of that J bracket, there's 2 hole openings that they get threaded into. Okay. We're going to grab our screws for our front shocks. Hopefully these are the ones that we used. No, need to be longer than that. So these screw lengths, they're about like a 25 millimeter length. They're the initial ones from the front shock tower. Quick check. So if you're using the stock lane shock bodies, you're going to have to put some sort of spacer behind them. Say like a 2 mil. Or the original nut. So what needs to be done with your shocks, if you're using the stock lane shocks, is you actually want to pull all the limiters, the external one and the internal one. I'm going to do that at a later time. Right now, I'm just going to get the shocks put in here just for demonstration purposes. But you do want to tear open the shocks, pull the fuel tubing out so they have full length, both external and or both retract and full extension, because the car itself will limit the travel. That's on there for now. Again, these are overextended because of the limiters. I can't reduce more than I want. So we're going ahead and install our caster blocks into the car. So they will be a case if you're going to there's a number, these are number 15s. The number is going to be facing forward. Grab our front hinge pin. Slide that in. Do the same for the other side. grab those tiny little screws. And thread them back in to capture the pins. We're going to grab 2 more of the ball studs. Oh, careful not to stab your hand. And there is going to be a threaded hole or hole opening in the front of the caster blocks, and just thread those in. So at this point, it should look something like this. I don't know if you can see that on camera. Shocks mounted going through the front bulkhead. I have a 2mm spacer just so my head of my shock body clears this. There's the custom 3D printed floating body mounts. We'll grab 2 of the front, or 2 of the float body mounts, or body posts, and the screws that are meant to go with it. And we'll just slide it through the opening. And the hole is going to go, through the back side. There's a little pocket for the head of the screw to sit in. So to get an idea of where you want the body post to sit, you take those holes, and the hole, I don't know if you can see the camera, the little hole is just above the flat face. So when you have the hole just poking fully through, that would be enough, or a good position to start threading the screw in. And if you're close, it will find its way through. I'm just going to pause the video momentarily. Alright. Continuing on, we're going to put on our links. Okay, so right now, my links are too short. So you can see they're heavily cambered right now. So you're actually going to be extending these out so they're about the same length, center to center, as the bottom arm. The gap you're going to aim for in between here. You're going to extend this out, center gap in between the plastic, so that exposed of the tie rod is going to be 37 millimeters. 37 millimeters will get you close to 0 camber. It depends on your toe setting as well, but this is just a rough guideline to get you pretty close. Where am I right now? About 35. $36. A little far. I'm at 36 3/4. Just a hair over 37. There we go, 37 on that side. Repeat the same on the other side. $35.5. 36.5. 36.5. Just a tear over. Just our hair under. Yeah, too far. Okay, that's good. Those are equal. Okay, so now we're going to go ahead and install our front steer knuckles. We're going to need the 2 pins and the 2 small remaining screws, little tiny button heads. There we go. Fine. So from our servo, that little link, servo has a link. We're going to snap it right on top of here. Okay, we're going to take our steering knuckles and making sure first the links are equal on both sides, because these right now aren't. So I want to see roughly equal length thread on both sides, just so that you don't risk popping one side out when you back out the thread. Pop those links on. I'll just measure my car. We're going to look for about, say, 35 millimeters in the front. From spot to spot, 35 millimeters would be a good starting point. If I can just get a point on here. Okay, so we're So one thing that's apparent right now with how I just put the front links on is you kind of want to follow the direction, have them all go in the same direction, and it's easiest to kind of follow the very front tie rod steering links because they're the most pain to rotate around because it has an all ball head. So I'm just gonna get this to 35. Just keep balancing back between those two exact same figures. That's good. So what I'm gonna do is I'm actually gonna pop this link off and flip them around. That way, all my threads are in the same direction, or my tie rod rotations all the same direction. And it'll just help you a little bit to know which way to turn it. So that front end is done. We're gonna just kind of move our way back. We got our battery tray here. And I'm just gonna use this opening here just to feed the wire to kind of help keep in place. Because my receiver, I'm going to put it up here, so my wire just kind of tuck right up there and keep it out of the way. Also, I have this channel back here, so I might take my ESC, feed my wire through this opening on the battery tray, and come up as well. So there'll be included some shorter screws to screw on your tray. I'm just going to put the one in for now because I'm not exactly sure where I'm going to sit the battery tray until I throw it like on scales. So that's sitting there for now. This is flexible, so you can easily fit your battery underneath if it's right up underneath, under the right in front of the bulkhead. So now we get to the fun side. We're going to work on the back. So we're going to kind of first start off with the arms. Just going to get that tackled out of the way. Here's hoping I don't build them backwards. I think I'm going to. So we actually are not going to use the rear hubs. There is a 3D printed set that is included that allows for the floating body mounts in the rear. So there's these little brackets that our body posts go into. We're just going to thread it into the back of the hubs. Okay, we're going to take our rear body posts and we're just going to get those installed. So looking through a light, you can kind of use it to find like a little pinhole of light through. So once again, it's just the holes just sitting past the top. That's roughly where it's going to go. Do the same with the other side. Okay, so now we're going to take our arms. Right is going on the left, left is going on the right. We want to take our ball stud hole, and it's going to stick outward. Thread these back in. Actually, before I do that, let's get the arms on, or not the arms, but the axles. To the side. So I'll make sure those bearings are fully seated. Is that bearing sitting in right? There we go. I didn't. That's why I said it. Make sure the bearings are seated properly. I didn't have it in there fully. That's in. All right. So now continuing on, ball stud to the rear. putting the little screws back in to hold those pins in place so they don't come out. Okay, so that's all done. What we're gonna do now is we're gonna take the base and we're gonna first attach it to the transmission. We're gonna feed 2 screws through these openings so that it threads into the bulkhead here to keep it in place. We're gonna use probably we consider 10 mil screws. So 10 mil screw through the big opening. Making its way down. There we go. Okay. That's one. Go to the other side. Push that through. Number 2. So now what we're going to do is we're going to take our front pivot block for the shocks, the one with the aluminum insert, feed it through this opening, and then we're going to push it upward. So now we got a gap underneath it. There's an insert that gets fed underneath that, like such. Okay. And then we're going to go ahead and fire 2 screws to the bottom chassis to hold the shock tower down. That will get things in place for us to start building everything else on the car. We're going to grab 2 30 mil screws. Grab our version of the Ugga Dugga. Got right in personal there. All right, we're gonna take this opportunity to put in our 2 12 mil set screws in the back. It's gonna thread through this opening here, and these set screws act as ways to limit the maximum travel of your rear arms. So we're gonna thread these in, and we're gonna thread it in until we start seeing it poke through the opposing side up here. These can get adjusted later if droop limiting is required. Okay. All right, now we're gonna go ahead. Oh, sorry, we did need this part. I apologize for pulling to the side. We need this part here. Though you don't fully need it, it just gives you some additional bracing in the rear to strengthen the back end up. Two more 10 mils. Feed it to the top opening. I do apologize. Actually, this is put back on. Dropping the ball here. Sorry. So yeah, we will put this back on. because it's going to brace our rear shock tower, and it's a gap spacer for the transmission. Insert this back in there. Okay. So we probably will need longer screws than what I had grabbed initially. So it's going to be two 12 mils. And then we're going to put back into the rear of the shock tower. I think they're 14 mils. Yeah, 14 mil screws. Go back to reinforce the shock tower. So that way it has the rigidity. We're going to put back in that screw that spanned across, the long one. And because we no longer have this installed, there's a little insert that takes its place for the width. Get our nut. And just have it get snug, don't reef it down. We need to find our long countersunk screw, the one that went all the way through. We're going to put that back in. All right, so you can see here we have this void. This is where this brace is going to go in. There's a chamfer. That chamfer leading edge goes towards the motor. Okay, we're going to use that other long screw that was used to hold the wheelie bar. We're going to feed that through. Okay, and then from the bottom, two countersunk screws pulled from the kit. We need to grab our two 25 mil screw lengths, and they're going to go from the bottom through here into the motor guard. Okay, so you can see the heads of the screws just poking through. All right, next thing we are going to do is we're going to fire two 30 mil screws through these openings here to connect the front arm bulkhead. Sorry for bumping the camera there. And I apologize, those two screws don't need to be that long. I'm going to swap it out for two 25 mil. Okay, that's better. Before I forget, I'm just going to go ahead and I'm going to put a couple of the set screws. I include 3 different lengths, a 6, an 8, and a 10 mil set screws that are for the front end to limit your travel in the front. So I'm just going to get those threaded in before I forget. And that will limit maximum travel in the front. Right now I have the 6s, but I'll most likely use the 8s or the 10s. The reason why I just put the 6s in for now is just because of how these shocks are overextended and I can't close them up anyway, so it's just a reminder. Okay, so that's all tightened up there. So now the next thing is we're going to go ahead and get our arms thrown on. So our arms are swept around. So we'll be going forward. Oh, I'm an idiot. I make mistakes. Everyone makes mistakes. Please forgive me. So the reason why I put those 2 screws in, I'm like, why did I swap them 25? Leave it 30 mil. So I apologize to everyone who's been following along. That is my mistake. I apologize greatly for this. So this is the point where the wheelie bar is installed, and this is the difference between the two. There is meant to be a 1/8 gap between the bottom of the transmission and the plate. That is either done by the spacer here, or in our case, our wheelie bar. So our wheelie bar fit in there to fill that gap, and everything will sit flat and level. So once again, I apologize for those who've been following along and have been doing all the same steps in real time, only for them to have to undo that part. All right, now we can get to putting the arms on. So the arms are there. We're gonna grab our rear pivot block and insert that in the back. So now what gets included with the car are these shims. Okay, these shims are meant to adjust your anti-squat. From factory, the stock losi actually has some built-in anti-squat of a -4 degrees. So what that is that when this is on the stock chassis, this is pushed down to the bottom, and what happens is instead of your arms being flat, it's tilted at an angle about 4 degrees. So if the front of the car is the front of the car is that way, the back of the arms with negative anti-squat is tilted like this. When you have a negative anti-squat, it makes it harder, a little bit harder for the weight to transfer to the rear. If you run a positive anti-squat, then it's easier for the weight to transfer. It's a small amount, but it's a good tuning option to have if you're just trying to find that last little bit of grip at the launch or through your run. So with no inserts put underneath the car, you are at -4 degrees. With one insert put underneath that block, you're at 0. If you put 2 in there, then you're at +4 degrees. I'm going to start off with 1 shim inside underneath it, so we're neutral. Sorry about the noise. So you're going to use two 30mm screws. You're going to feed it through the back of the chassis. Now, what I kind of like to do is I like to take my other shim and sit it on top for if I need to adjust it, it's there for me. So grab two more nuts. So because of this bracket in the way, I'm going to have to use a pair of pliers to hold that nut. I just want to snug it. All right. So now we're going to take our rear links. We're going to take a look at the front again to see which direction the links are going. And we're going to match it accordingly. Okay. So in this case, you won't be able to get your links, your dog bones in, I don't think, without adjusting. I'll check. I think the links are going to be too short. Oh, no, you can. Okay, cool. So there's that. Checking the link direction for the threads. That way they all match. Okay. Oh, I've goofed up again. Did I goof up? I don't know. I'll check in a second. Yeah. Put it on backwards. Or did I? Ah! I think I had it right the first way. I'm looking at the threads. I'm trying to make sure that the thread direction is the same in the front and rear, so that when I rotate the link, I rotate them the same direction or same rotation. No, I did have it right way. Just plays mind games with me. Okay, that's good. Sorry for getting in front of the camera. And this direction's good. Okay. We're gonna go ahead and I'm gonna throw the slipper on. It probably would have been better to have thrown it on before putting the link on, but we'll get around that. So myself, I like to have in my rears the aluminum arms. You can pick them up pretty cheap. As you can see with the stock arms, these can flex pretty easily. Whereas if you have aluminum arms, that's just a play of my hubs, but like the arms just don't move. It stays rigid. So when you try to launch the car, the wheels can cause this possibly to skip, okay, and it breaks traction. So we're looking at a rear length. This car. Hope I can get a measurement on it. Take a wheel off. So we're going to be looking at roughly 33.5 millimeters in the rear for close to 0 camber. So we're going to go to 33.5. But actually we can't go off that actually. My links are slightly angled where mine have a bit different. So go to 35 for now. See how close you are with a camber gauge. That would be at least a decent starting point at 35. It is very important to have your camber, your toe, all your stuff set up before you mount your body, because the hubs or the body posts are mounted directly to the hub. If you change your camber, you're going to change where the holes sit. So it's very important to get that set up first before you put holes in your bodies. This one's close. Too far. Okay. So we're going to throw on our shocks. Screws for the rear arms or rear shocks. All right. Cute. All right, up next, we're gonna throw in our rear wheelie bar. Okay, I'm just gonna back this off just a hair, just so we have some more movement. I'm gonna grab a screw. And we're gonna target the second hole here. Close enough to get it threaded in. Okay, so that's in. So now I can just rotate this thumb screw here or whatever, extend my length, and it will lower or raise my rear wheelie bar. We're gonna install in our wheelie bar mounts, or the bracket for the rear wheels. We're gonna go grab 2mm shims, and that's just gonna be so we can space it away from the bracket. And you just want this to be snug. See, that's too tight, so the wheel doesn't spin, so just back it off till you're satisfied with how the wheel spins. There you go. All right. They're not necessarily there, so I'll grab from my kit. There's 4 holes that this would get threaded onto. And with that last screw put in, it is done. So you just gotta get your wheels on, check your camber, get your electronics in, get the car full weight before you do your camber setup. Make sure you have your pull limiters out of your shocks. And yeah, there she be. Thanks for checking out the video. Hopefully it was helpful for you when you're building your own kit. If you have any issues, do not hesitate to reach out to me. I'm here to help. I want as many people satisfied with the kit as I am.